What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? 2010's already, well, basically one day away from being done. And it's not quite New Year's Eve yet, but I'm going to a New Year's party tonight, but I figured I'd give you guys an album review before I left. How does that sound? It's exactly what we're going to do, because we're going to go back and jump into the Pantera discography, and we're going to get to the second to last official studio record before the band broke up. Yeah, you thought this journey was going to be a little bit longer? Well, it's going to be. Just wait. Great Southern Trendkill is the album that we're talking about, and it's been right now, with the entrance of 2011, it's going to be 15 years ever since this album was released. Yeah, it was released in 1996, and it's often considered to be sort of like the bastard child of the Pantera discography, because it's really a little bit different and often overlooked, because at this point a lot of the trends that maybe Pantera could be credited for either starting or having some sort of disassociation with really were starting to get underway. There was, of course, the rap metal, the new metal, and all that stuff that was beginning to go on, and it's something that Pantera was trying to say, especially in this record, but even more so with their final record, Reinventing the Steel, that they were not a part of any of this, that they are true to themselves. That's a little bit of a scope of the lyrical concept on maybe one or two tracks, but this is mostly a song that's going to be dealing with a lot of addiction. Definitely going to be a lot of drugs and a lot of alcoholism. Suicide, of course, makes a profound impact on Suicide Note Part 1 and 2. And it also considers the song, or should I say contains the song, that is considered to be one of the best guitar solos, not only of Dimebag Darrell's career, but of all time. That's the song Floods, which is about the apocalypse. Now, overall, this has a very, very tight sound to it. However, the one thing that a lot of people may find a little bit different, either that or may find as a potential credit for the influence of Pantera on the newer age of the hardcore sounding bands, or the deathcore, so to speak, is what they did with the vocals here. The vocals were actually done distantly in Louisiana, whereas the rest of the music was recorded in Texas by Vinny and Rex and Dime, whereas Phil did all of the vocals from Trent Reznor's studio. Now, what they did on this is they actually double-layered the vocals to give it more of a quote-unquote demonic sound to it. The result of what you get, you can clearly tell that there's a lot of overlaying going on, because Phil does not sound like he did on the previous records that preceded this, such as Far Beyond Driven and Vulgar Display of Power. But instead, you kind of hear that little bit of a low gurgle, that growl, that little bit of a snarl to it that you hear a lot more presently in the deathcore and the hardcore scene, something that you hear a lot of newer age bands that most of us find annoying to be doing. Pantera is probably one of the first bands that really experimented with this on a large scale bill, should I say, considering they were at the time the savior of heavy metal, considering Metallica had taken hiatus from roughly 1991 or 92 all the way up until the release of Load after James Hetfield's accident with the Pyros. But the interesting part about this is that they have really, they formed this staple that became such a big deal in the current deathcore scene and the hardcore scene, but yet they wanted to distance themselves as far away as possible from that. Phil Anselmo, of course, as you know, has a great affiliation with either grindcore and with all sorts of fucked up shit, but, I mean, still. There are some screams on one track on this album that were actually considered by Seth Putnam, of course, of Anal Cunt fame, so if you don't believe me, there is your proof. And, of course, there was a lot of, a little bit more of a groove influence on this as well. Not to say that the previous three didn't have groove, but this one really took it to the extreme. But, of course, anybody that would say that there is a certified down influence in there would have to provide some pretty heavy proof, considering most of the music was written at a distance only from Phil Anselmo. So, it's going to be a difficult argument for some people to make. Overall, this album sold particularly well. This is one of those albums where Pantera already had found their stride. It was the middle of the 90s, so there wasn't any threat of downloading or pirating or anything like that. So you can definitely understand why sales were kind of up. It only took about 2 months for this album to go gold. Now, it took another 8 years in order for it to go platinum and sell 1 million records. But this still is considered to be sort of a late bloomer in the Pantera discography. A lot of people, whenever they go out and they purchase a Pantera album today, will typically stick with your Vulgar Display of Powers, Far Beyond Drivens, and especially your Cowboys from Hell. However, there's definitely been an influx of the Great Southern Trendkill being a part of these purchases. And I think it's a certain level of respect that's finally being given to this album, and has been for the past couple of years. It's not just been because of the death of Dimebag Darrell that all of their albums have gotten some certified recognition. It's actually because I think this was an album that fans started to realize was a little bit more subtle, but a little bit more talented than perhaps some of the ones that they would cite before as their favorites. This could easily be seen as potentially the creative peak. However, some people would argue with that because there's still one album left. A lot of people said that their music career, their musical palette, their musical life was never really finished. That perhaps they left their creative peak at the table with their last album, which was released a number of years later, called Reinventing the Steel. But wait, we're not going to jump right into that yet. Yeah, that's right. In the next video, the next review here in the Pantera discography, Louder Than Hell, we'll tackle the very final record in the Pantera collection, Reinventing the Steel.